Hey, hello, everybody. 7 o'clocky on the dotty. East Coast. Time for a roast. Just keep. How the hell are you doing tonight? It's September 9th, 2025, 7 o'clock, now 7:01. And we've got a good show ahead of us. I can't wait to speak with Ryan Gable. I don't know the last time we spoke with him. I think it was earlier on this year. I think it was 2025, but it's been months. And it's great to have him on because I want to talk in the first hour, at least, about the latest of what he has taken from all of the reports that we've gotten about this Manhattan-sized interstellar object, 3I Atlas, that NASA is categorizing as a comet. But others who are reporting on this, including Avi Loeb they are talking about intent. They're talking about whether or not this is the invasion force that is following the scout that was Oumuamua in 2017. If you don't remember, that cigar-shaped object that came barreling through the solar system and then accelerated around the sun and came on out, and they said because of all the acceleration, they thought that might have been some sort of a war scout, and I think that's like the Polynesian translation for what Oumuamua is. I don't know, but Ryan's going to go into that and everything else to see, hey, what is metaphor and what's real, and what's going to happen when cigar object 1, 2, and 3 shows up in November. So it's going to be interesting to hear about, because I like dumping into these issues with Ryan, because they always go miles deeper, 20,000 leagues under the surface. And then I'll take your calls in the second half. I've got strange stories from the audience. I thought that would go hand in hand with what we got over here, but with all the mixed news that's going on and some things that are just kicking around inside of my head already, you just never know where it'll go. And I would not be surprised if I have to retitle some part of this show. And if not, then I have some stuff ready to go tomorrow as well. And we'll see what we do with Thursday instead. All right. Great. Big things to announce tonight, though. I mean, one big thing to announce tonight. It's very important. We'll do that in just a second. But I wanted to just welcome you aboard, let you know what we're going to talk about. And that's about it. So let's get into one piece. No, that's all I need to do. All right, let's get this one kicked off, and when we come back, it'll be you, me, and a little bit of table setting for Ryan Gable. Don't go anywhere.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back.
Does anybody else want to stay?
Let's run!
Finally, a little bit of moving and shaking with the new intro and the new intermission and all that stuff. Oh, man. I don't know what the hell's going on. Now I've got... I won't go into it. Whatever. Hopefully we'll be making some progress soon. And progress, I mean a wrap. Let's wrap it up. I have a few things here. The first thing I got to say is because we had that little incident last night when I was telling people that there's still a raffle giveaway that we were going to do last night, but then everybody said, Frank, the QF Jam promo code on KetoBrainz did not work. So I got in touch with Molly, and she said, well, okay, listen, you're right, it didn't work. It wasn't active. We had the promo code Jamboree active, and we never switched it over. So here's what's going on. on KetoBrainz.com, our wonderful sponsor. They're extending the big raffle until Thursday. QFJAM is going to be live for all of the stuff on that website, including all of the stuff on Molly's peptide products on mindthymitochondria.com. I put the links to all of it in the description of this episode. They're all linked in there. I first of all, we got to talk more about that soon, because I just heard Joe Rogan's some clips of somebody that was on Rogan today going deep into peptides and what the potential for them really are. And I got a farm for clips there because I love where that topic in general is going. But here's what the prize package is. This is insane. You can go on KetoBrainz right now and just buy a hand blender for $20, and you'd be in the running for this. A vibration plate, which I'm going to be releasing a blog on the user's guide to how vibration plates work tomorrow. A vibration plate, one full bag of KetoBrainz, one deluxe blender and long-handled scoop, one brass knuckle mug, one bottle of the BPC 157, and one red light face mask. Okay? So there is the extended Jamboree raffle fund. So there you go. KetoBrainz.com or mindthymitochondria.com. All the links are in the description of this episode. And if you use QFJAM as the promo code for whatever you bought, you're in the running for, again, hundreds of dollars worth of stuff. Of great stuff. So just throwing that out there. And one last thing, because we got 3 minutes until Ryan Gable shows up, as it is 7:07 p.m. Today, we have launched a survey. It is the first that we've ever done this, and all I'm going to say is that the future of the show is in your hands. For the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be pushing this out there. It's a 2026 survey, the first we've ever done. Krista put it together a few weeks ago. A few days ago, I handed it over to Rich Barris to just take a look at some things, to make some tweaks, to get it, and also to get it hosted on his site. So he's hosting it. I put the link in the description as well, but I'm going to be putting it in the chat room right now. This is a 3-minute. We got it down. Rich and I got this down to a 3-minute long survey. It's 3 minutes of your time. It's only 25 questions, and it'll help determine some very important moves that are going to be made going into 2026 with this show. So if you like the show, I don't care even if you don't like the show, just answer what you like or don't. Just answer the questions. Go in there and answer all the questions, and then pass it along to pass the link to somebody that you know who also listens to the show. That's in the description. I'm putting it on Telegram, the Patreon, the Subscribe Star. Tomorrow it'll be out on Twitter, and I'm going to keep putting this out there over the course of the next 2 weeks. I would love to get 1,000 to 2,000 respondents. I would really love that, because what we're going to learn from this is going to make my life a lot easier going into 2026. What to tweak, what to polish, all that stuff. So far, what I've seen has been very interesting. Very interesting to see what people like. Number one, as of right now, oh boy, I love it. I love some stuff. Everything else is just, I'm taking it with a grateful grain, not a grateful grain of salt, a grateful hill of beans. That's what I'm going to really love this. So please get in on that survey and be a part of 2026 and all the goodie that's going on there. All right, so here's what we have. New photos of Interstellar comet. 3-eye, I believe that's an eye. It doesn't look like a 1. 3-eye Atlas reveals its growing tail before our very eyes. So the tail is growing, so I guess that means it's probably getting closer to us, right? Well, what can you ever really tell? What can you trust about any of this stuff? What can you trust? There it is. I guess that's it right in the middle. Unless that's all animation. Like it all looks like it's animated. Anyway, but this is the one I wanted to bring up. And I want to bring on our good buddy, Ryan Gable for this one, because why not just read it with Ryan? That's what I say. And he's joining us live. I guess it's going to be about 7:30 or 8 o'clock his time in Japan. Ryan Gable is a veteran radio personality, author, host of The Secret Teachings, a thought-provoking podcast and radio show exploring topics like parapolitics, occult studies, and symbolism for over 15 years now, drawing inspiration from many recognizable people's works that we talked about in the past. I believe Manly P. Hall came up in the past talks with him. He has written several books, including Occult Arcana, which is on my bookshelf, The Technological Elixir. I know he's working on one right now, but he's promoting critical thinking wherever he goes. Ryan, sorry, my brain is still fried from this weekend. Ryan Gable, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, Frank.
Oh, you sound fantastic. Great microphone. Fantastic connection we have from New York to Japan. This is wonderful.
Amazing. The other side of the world.
I know. You know, for all the problems, for all the things that need to be diagnosed and treated in society and the world at large, there is so much miraculous stuff going on. And the fact that we're able to do this independently it never gets old for me.
No, me either. I think that we take a lot of these things for granted, for sure. I take it for granted. Something doesn't work on my computer or my mixing board, I get upset, and I have to realize, hey, I can talk to Frank and other people around the world with crystal clear HD video and sound, and it's magical, actually.
It really is. It really is. And welcome to the show again. I wanted to talk to you about what's going on in the skies in more detail. I'm talking about deep space and this 3-eye. I got that right. It's 3-eye atlas, correct?
That is correct, unless something's changed. Yes, that is correct.
Well, what makes this story newsworthy isn't that there's some sort of an impact threat, because nobody has said that until I saw it today with their supposed scout drone impact theories that I saw. But it's that from the beginning, the question of these objects has been about the intent. And I said, the intent? When you talk about intent, you're talking about something that's being consciously driven, that there is a plan in place, but of course, that kind of goes, if you've been following all of the stories that are really been popular since 2017, when everybody in the media and the government started doing a 180 on the way that the seriousness with which they approach UFO, UAPs, coming forward with a Tic Tac object. We have Navy disclosures going on, all that stuff. It makes you really wonder what we've been building up towards since 2017. So what are your general thoughts about this before we get into this New York Post article and parse it up a bit?
Yeah, so I have a different perspective than most of the UFO community, if we can call it that. I have a different perspective than most of all of the mainstream media. It doesn't make my perspective right. I just have a different perspective because I don't believe, based on what I'm reading in the New York Post or on social media, or for that matter, from whether you're a scientist like Avi Loeb or you're a journalist. I just don't believe things based on the way that they're presented. And to be very specific about what I mean, when I read Avi Loeb's actual paper, his actual paper on 3-eye atlas is completely different than virtually every single media report and virtually every single UFO commentator. His actual report, Frank, says that the idea that this could be some sort of non-natural object, some sort of perhaps technology, this is based on a pedagogical exercise. That's the term that they use, pedagogical, which means a way of learning. So it's basically a thought exercise. And he also says in the paper, this is the conclusion of the Harvard team. This is a quote. By far, the most likely outcome will be that 3-eye atlas is a completely natural interstellar object, probably a comet. And the authors await the astronomical data to support this likely origin. Now, Avi Loeb is a friend of mine who I trust, and Avi Loeb is, I think in the past with Oumuamua and with Borisov and with this atlas, Avi Loeb is very vocal about the possibility that it might be something unnatural, and he's been very vocal about the idea that it could be alien. But if you actually read the scientific paper that he published on Atlas, that's not what it says. It's most likely a comet. Now, I think outside of the discussions on UFOs and outside of the discussions on comets, I think what's perhaps more important is addressing this from the same perspective we address climate issues. And what I mean by that is if you were to, for example, search for Nature magazine or Nature, the Nature publication, one of the most prestigious journals, and search for the frequency of hurricanes in their records, and you'll find recent stories about how hurricanes are not any more frequent, they're not any more severe by any metric. However, they might appear to be so because we're observing them more, we're seeing them more, we're studying them more. So they appear to be more frequent. And I think it's the same thing with comets or anything that we might consider to be interstellar. Until Oumuamua, we had never officially seen anything interstellar. So that means that anything, including Oumuamua and anything that comes later, Borisov and Atlas, all of that is going to be quote unquote new. We've never seen it before. So anything that's observed or anything that's assumed based on computer models or mathematics is going to be a new thing. We've never seen it before. And because it's a new thing, a lot of people jump to the conclusion, oh, it must be alien, which is a really irresponsible thing to do. It's also irresponsible to just assume, oh, it's just a comet, which is the whole point of the pedagogical exercise that Avi Loeb did with his team at Harvard. The whole point was, let's keep an open mind. Something like this could be a Bracewell probe. Something like this could be something that a civilization sends out to perhaps seed solar systems or seed the universe, kind of like panspermia, or something like this could just be an observation platform for another race, another civilization, or something like this just could be a phenomenon that we've never seen before. In fact, there's a very good example that you can find in the world of what we call, I think they call it the red list, but in the world of extinct species or endangered species. I mean, literally the way that we determine that as a society is they send out some scientists, or a lot of it's volunteers, people like you and I, and we go to the middle of the woods. You go to upstate New York, you go to the middle of the woods, and you don't see a bird that's been seen there before. Well, if other people don't see the bird for a few months, a few years, suddenly it's endangered. Even if it has the same population it's always had, there's no way to know that, but just because we haven't seen it, it becomes endangered. And I think the same thing can apply to these types of objects in space, especially when we're talking about not going into a forest to see something. We're talking about vast stretches of, quote, space in which we have to have complex technologies. And even with complex technologies, most of those technologies are not telescopes, they're computer models. So a lot of it is based on assumption, and a lot of it is frankly based on people that are trying to get attention for spreading ideas. Like if you've probably seen on social media, Frank, X, Facebook, etc., I see it all the time. Maybe it's because I discuss these things. There's every news article, every news site, quite frankly, every hack in the UFO community telling people this is an alien object, and Avi Loeb is the scientist who backs that assessment. And it's like, he didn't even say that. The paper doesn't say that, but they make money and clicks off of that. And this is one of those things to conclude, as far as I'm concerned, that will be like everything else. It'll come, it'll go, and everybody will forget about it until the next grift. That's my assessment of it.
Well, it's also not it's not very uncommon for us to have what is actually going on, and those who know how to read the white papers and who know actually how to put the scope of work or a theory into proper context, and what people in the news business are prone to do, just be able to sell a few papers if they're still publishing papers, or to get some clicks if they're purely digital. And so there's always been that disconnect between finding a sensational line to follow versus trying to understand, what this is, because if it is just a rock, flying through space, there's really nothing crazy to talk about there, especially if it's not going to come anywhere near us. But this is what we got out of the New York Post just a couple days ago. And of course, stop me along the way. We can just parse this up because it's not too long. Headline. There's one for you, Ryan. Manhattan-sized interstellar object 3I Atlas could release mini probes that hit Earth, expert warns. Now, whether those probes are conscious or not, maybe it's scientific jargon for a piece of a larger object that breaks off as it's, just barreling through space or something like that. The average person who reads this thinks about a mothership releasing its minions.
Oh, yes.
That's the imagery in the mind. Representative Anna Paulina Luna and Harvard scientist Avi Loeb are calling for NASA to monitor the Manhattan-sized interstellar object 3I Atlas as it passes the sun on Halloween Eve. Now, here's the other thing. Whatever the actual papers and the studies really conclude, there is also the projection. The projection to either have commercial impact on people is one thing, but then there's also a mental impact on people. There's always a synchronistic value to things. There's Halloween. Now we have this thing passing us by on Halloween, and what's going on above us and below us and all that stuff. So all of a sudden we have potential aliens showing up during the peak of spooky season. And already somebody can just take that and run with it. I know I sure do from time to time. But they're saying that it's going to it passes the sun on Halloween Eve to ensure it does not drop off mini probes that could invade Earth. Use the word invade. So we'll keep going. You just stop me wherever you want. Luna and the Ivy League astrophysicists appeared together on a podcast and called for both the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter and Jupiter's Juno probe to adjust their current courses and monitor the object that NASA has deemed a comet. Quote, if we are visited by a technological object like 3I Atlas, it could either visit us or release some mini probes that arrive to Earth and appear as UAP. Loeb told the Soul Foundation podcast released Friday, referring to the technical term for UFOs. Now, when you say technological object...
I'm sorry, Frank. Go ahead.
No. In your response, can you please address the use of the phrase technological object?
Well, if Avi Loeb is saying if we are visited by a technological object like 3I Atlas, you have to be very aware of the words that he's using in the context of those words. He's not saying that it is, obviously. He's saying if, and if it is a technological object like, in the same way that the headline of the article is, could release. It's completely theoretical. And it's the idea that, sure, it's possible, at least by our modern sci-fi perception of what technology is and how aliens might, or how we might make contact or monitor perhaps another planet. But he's not saying that it is. And this is the problem that I have, and the problem that I was addressing when you first asked me the question, is that this is great for clicks, this is great for news articles, this is great for podcasts, but it isn't really great for objective analysis of reality. And it kind of, I think, creates, at least in the UFO community, it certainly creates these kind of like fantasy delusions. I've actually seen people online that think that this is like I think there's a cult forming around it. There are some people that claim that they're ready to visit the comet, which I'm pretty sure we've had something like that happen before.
Absolutely.
So these kinds of things are always going to produce extremes. There are going to be people that would always reject ideas that Avi Loeb, people like him, have put forward, which I think is absurd because it's like Schrodinger's comet. It could be anything. We don't know. But ultimately, I think that, this is just my assessment, the way that I choose to view things. I don't get excited or sad one way or the other about it. I just observe it and try to be objective about it. And if it's an alien probe, Great. If it's not, great. We move on to the next subject either way, and people will forget about this faster than they forgot about Borisov.
Now, what do you take it from when we go deeper into the presentation to the public? Whenever you come on, I love getting synchronicity reports from you and things that you see either telling a story or at least maybe a subconscious web of points that might be pieced together by any kind of a broadcast company, whether they're publishing or whatever, or broadcasting traditionally. Anything in this respect, as far as ancient lore, rituals, anything that we have seen in the past, whether they be rocket launches during the eclipse or the Super Bowl halftime shows. What about this?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I actually did an entire show on this called Messianic Triplicity, which is in my archive at tstradio.info. So give me just a second. I'll try to present this information and I'll try to smooth it out, and cut me off at any point if you want to elaborate on something. But these were my thoughts. Speaking of Representative Anna Luna, she went on Joe Rogan back in August, so just a few weeks ago. And I never really listened to Joe Rogan. I just happened to see the clip of it, and I thought, oh, I'll go listen to this interview. I got through about 80-90% of it, and I thought, okay, that's enough. But she had said that she's seen evidence of what might be, quote, interdimensional beings. I don't know if you watched that interview or you listened to it.
That quote is actually in this, just to give you a little bit of fuel for your fire. Here it is right here. In the event that there is life, it is not our obligation to inform the public on that, Luna asked rhetorically on the podcast that she was on. Luna further teased the revelations to come from Tuesday's hearing on UAPs, commonly known as UFOs. She stated at the hearing will begin to address the claims of non-human and interdimensional technology. We're actually going to basically the president to ask if we can get access to programs that may exist within these different agencies. And she spoke very vaguely on Rogan. That's why I listened to a little bit of it, but it didn't move the needle for me one way or another, because we've heard that language time and time again. But yes, to your point, she's even saying it in this podcast that she appeared on with Avi Loeb.
Yes, so she says interdimensional beings, and she says, quote, movements outside of time and space. And she also referred quite a bit in that interview, I don't know if you recall this, to the time of Christ and to ancient astronaut theory. And I'll mention my assessment of that in a moment, but there's a few things that we need to understand here. So first of all, regardless of what anybody's assessment is of her interview, it is a lot of the same thing that we've heard over and over again. It isn't anything really new. In fact, it's so old that if you go back to July of 1947, there's a memorandum. It's a very famous memorandum, 6751, I believe is the number. I don't know if it's legit or not, but it is an old document. If it's not legit, then there's clearly an intention to create the perspective that the document intends to create, which is very peculiar because the document says that there are UFOs, or there are discs carrying crews, that they're under remote control, and that they have a mission from another world. And it's written kind of in scientific and esoteric terms. It even says that these discs come from another planet, but the planet is not a planet like our planet. It's a, quote, etheric planet, which interpenetrates with our own and is not perceptible to us. In other words, this military document going back to 1947, which you'll note is the same time as Roswell, this document is basically speaking of interdimensional beings, things that interpenetrate with our world. They also refer to, for anybody who's ever looked at Madame Blavatsky, although she's, I'd say, 60% fraud, 40% real, she used terms like locus and talus, which are respectively the higher and lower spiritual planes. They're Sanskrit, I believe, and the document actually refers to the higher and the lower spiritual planes being the locus and the talus. And these are the places, what we would probably call in modern contemporary religious terms, we'd call this heaven and hell, which I think is another reason we're seeing a lot of talk about UFOs and how there's probably angels and demons, and these things get mixed together. So that's the first thing. The second thing is what she is saying about the movements outside of time and space reminded me, I don't know if it reminded you, but it reminded me of the White House science czar, back in April, Michael Kratsios, saying that the U.S. has technology that can, quote, manipulate space and time, or manipulate time and space was the exact quote. And it probably won't be lost on your audience or you, Frank, wasn't lost on me, that the congressperson in question here is named Luna, which is Latin for the moon. It probably also won't be lost on you and your audience. It wasn't lost on me that the science advisor to the White House who said that about the technology, his name, Kratsios, is derived from Kratos, which was a god, a very powerful god, a god of strength and power associated with war. And he was the enforcer of Zeus and with his sister Bia, which represents force. He was strength, so strength and force do the bidding of Zeus, the chief god. It's a metaphor. But if you look at the names of these objects, you find something similar, something similarly related to Luna and Kratsios. I just did this by looking into the etymology of the words. I heard you mention Oumuamua earlier, and Oumuamua does mean, in its respective language, messenger from afar arriving first. Borisov, which was the second object that was, quote, interstellar, is known as the fighter. That's the language. It translates to fighter. And Atlas, as in Three-Eye Atlas, has the same meaning as Kratos or Kratos. It means strength. And in the mythology, Atlas is a titan. A titan is usually a primordial deity of natural forces. So I don't know if there's going to be a fourth interstellar object, but based on the three that we have and based on these stories about advanced technologies and maybe they're interdimensional, and we have people named Luna and Kratos or Kratsios, and then you have Borisov and Oumuamua and Atlas. If you look at their names side by side, what you get is the messenger from afar arriving as the fighter with strength to wage war. So it's the coming of war. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean like an actual war. It could just mean a transformation. It could just mean a shifting of something. But these names seem to imply that there is a messenger coming to bring war. That's the kind of impression that I get. It's one interpretation. It's not the only interpretation or the most important interpretation. It's just an interpretation. It could also mean that there's going to be a change in the way that people think. Now, to go a step further, my good friend Clyde Lewis, who's very good friends with Avi Loeb, they had discussed the idea that Three-Eye Atlas might actually be related to the Messiah, or the arrival of a Messiah. Avi Loeb had said in an interview that it signals perhaps, quote, a messianic era, that the Messiah in general outside of Three-Eye Atlas might actually come from, quote, another star. And Avi Loeb believes that we, quote, need to have a, quote, international organization to deal with the possible peace or conflict that might accompany contact with these either beings or a Messiah. Though Avi Loeb says he hopes, like President Reagan, that such a thing would bring people together, even if it's based on an external threat. And whatever you think of Avi Loeb, whatever you think of such an assessment, there is definitely something relevant about that, because good or bad, intentional or otherwise, this begins to fit into the mold, if you will, or it begins to fit into the little carrying case that is the conspiracies about a global government, about an extraterrestrial threat. And remember, the threat doesn't have to actually be, if you're talking about Carol Rosen, it doesn't actually have to be an alien armada that shows up and starts attacking U.S. military bases, like as if that's what would happen. We're very U.S.-centric about UFOs, which is a whole other issue. But I think that what would probably happen if that were to actually be a plan, and Blue Beam, by the way, is fake. That was an idea that some Canadian journalist had. It's not a real program. But if something like that were to actually happen, I think it would be just like COVID-19. At no point during the pandemic did anybody show you proof of a particle. Nobody showed you evidence that that particle made you sick. It was an invisible, microscopic thing that you could not see or interact with. And I think this on the macrocosmic level is very similar. In fact, during the pandemic, I think it was Time Magazine, maybe Newsweek, Time Magazine, I think it was, published a paper about COVID-19 and said COVID-19 could be a starting point to an alien invasion. You can't see it, comes out of nowhere, it attacks you. And I think this is kind of what Atlas or Borisov or Momo or whatever comes next might be. Regardless of what it actually is, it could be used in this way to encourage people to believe that there is an external threat, that there might be something. There doesn't actually have to be anything, though, Frank. There doesn't have to be proof of anything. There can just be this macrocosmic thing that's out there that's scaring us, and that could be used, which is why people criticize Avi Loeb for this statement, that could be used to build an international organization to deal with this, and that could result in the whole world coming together because of the potential of an alien threat. So that's the first part of my assessment. We can go a little bit further if you'd like.
An alien threat, or of course, when you bring up anything that's messianic, and first thing you wonder is, where does a person like Avi Loeb approach this from? Is it from a certain faith perspective, or is it agnostic? Is it something else? As far as and then of course for people who are of Christian faith, like myself here, you wonder. I'm always thinking about the Antichrist. I'm always looking around I'm always wondering about what that is. That a form? Is that a form that a singular person or singular entity would take? Is it a mindset? Is it some sort of an artificially intelligent system that creates some sort of becomes a sock puppet for something from the other side that can manifest into this world? I always wonder about where the hell all that leads. So, and then of course, to your point about about COVID-19, I was calling that by summer of 2020. I was calling that Project Flu Beam. I said, you really think about this, guys. You really think about this. We might be looking at Blue Beam right now, but you just swap out alien for some microbe that you can't see, and I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it was very much like Invasion of the Body Snatchers in some ways, because whereas during 9/11 we knew the kind of image of Osama bin Laden and his gang, that in our heads we saw the tattered and torn rags of men that are hanging out in caves in Afghanistan. Meanwhile, in this 21st century version of that and everything else, the terrorists could be us, and we didn't know. So there's so many incredible mind games that were being played, but they had existed on that level of an alien invasion, even though the culprit here was microscopic. You couldn't see it without a microscope. And according to what some people I know have said, even if you had a microscope, you wouldn't be able to see it either. But still, yeah, there's a lot here. Before you go into your next phase, what about the October to November time frame? Is there anything there, if we're not talking about something that is most likely, according to Avi Loeb's actual papers, they're saying that this is not an alien invasion force, despite what kind of Netflix level spectacle is being painted by the media for common news readers. If it's not that, then that makes me start looking into the symbolism and the metaphorical value of everything that's being published, right down to the Halloween Eve crossing of the sun and stuff like that. So what can you tell us about that October to November importance?
Well, I do believe that this actually takes me directly into the second phase of my observations on this particular subject, Frank, because whether or not I believe it, I don't really have a belief about what I'm about to say. There is a theory that there is a conspiracy involving Avi Loeb. Avi Loeb's real name is Abraham. He is from Israel, and he is a former member of the IDF. Now, that doesn't mean anything necessarily, because you either join it or usually I think you go to jail. And just because you join it, that also doesn't mean that you're fighting on the battlefield. He was a very smart guy who was technologically and I think probably mathematically inclined. He was a really smart guy involved in that kind of research. So people are speculating. I heard the dark journalists speculate that this might be part of an Israeli conspiracy. And although some might refute the notion of that as absurd, it is peculiar that Luna, the congresswoman we talked about, she's also Jewish. And that the entirety of the ancient astronaut theory, I don't know if you know this, Frank, the astronaut theory that she talked about on Joe Rogan was not invented by Eric von Daniken. It was invented by a Torah scholar named Mattis Agrist, who some speculate developed the, I believe they call it paleo astronaut theory, developed it arguably to demean and degrade Christ. That's just one interpretation. So there is a strange kind of Israeli prophetic Bible connection to this. And it gets even stranger on that note when you consider the fact that there are reports, it doesn't mean that they're true, but there are reports that this object is not really cylindrical or not really kind of elongated, as some have said, that it might be more of a cube type shape.
Oh.
And this, have you heard this?
No, but I see where this is going. Yeah.
Very strange. I'm not saying I believe that for the record. I don't know, but just the idea of it presents us alongside of the other idea that there is some messianic quality to this. And for the record, comets throughout all of human history have brought war, they've brought disease, they've brought the fall of kingdoms. So it's not crazy or absurd to think that the presence of something new in the sky might herald the change of something here on the ground, that it might spark a war, or that it might spark a disease, or not from microbes, by the way, but from gases and things like that, that it might spark some kind of religious shift or religious war even. I mean, these are things that have been the case, that have been true throughout all of human history. They're harbingers of all of those things and more. They're also harbingers of life because comets look like sperm, and that's the idea of panspermia, seeding the planets, which are basically eggs. So if you get this idea that maybe it's a cube or maybe it's messianic, this is where the New Jerusalem comes into play. And if you read the book of Revelation and you read about the New Jerusalem, it's a lot different than what people assume it to be. A lot of people assume the New Jerusalem is like an actual city. And there's like, I don't know, just joking around here, there's like a city council of the New Jerusalem. That's not what the New Jerusalem is. If you actually read Revelation, furthermore, if you read First Peter, if you read Ephesians, you read about the idea of things like the living stone. In First Peter, which was rejected by humans but chosen by God and very precious to God. If you read Ephesians 2, I believe is the chapter, that the book talks about citizens with God's people in his household, built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets. Christ is the chief cornerstone. This is Masonic language. This is the language of building, of alchemy, etc. And so if you go and you read Revelation, I believe it's 21:2, it says, I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. And in the Bible, it describes the New Jerusalem as a sort of cube-like shape. Now, if you interpret that as literal, I am trying to be objective, but I think that you're insane for interpreting it as literal. It's not. I think it's very metaphoric. When we're talking about living stones and cornerstones being Christ, or the foundation being apostles and prophets, we're speaking in symbols and metaphor here, which means that the holy city, the New Jerusalem, is not a physical location. The promised land, like Joseph Campbell and even Shlomo Sand, the tenured professor at Tel Aviv University, said in his book, The Invention of the Jewish People, this is not a physical thing. These are metaphors. These are symbols. There's no... everybody is exiled. Everybody is in a state of wanting. Everybody is in a state of either agreement or conflict with God, which is what the word Israel actually means. That we're talking about all humans, and we're not talking about geographical locations. And so if we're talking about the New Jerusalem coming down out of the heavens as a cube-like form, we're talking about geometry. We're talking about masonry. We're talking about alchemy. We're talking about transformation. We're talking about something that is way more complex than the literalisms that are sold in religious conversations. So, in other words, what we're talking about here is a spiritual transformation, which is something that certainly would happen if we're talking about aliens, if we're talking about the threat of aliens, if we're talking about the idea of the Messiah coming. And you're right to question. It's a really good question you asked. What is the motivation behind people who would say something like, the messianic presence that might be coming to Earth from somewhere else, from another star?
Right.
Well, my good friend Clyde Lewis, he grew up Mormon. Can't speak for him entirely, but I know that he's more so on the Christian side of things. But he's a very smart guy, as you know, and he's into all sorts of things, and he's very smart in terms of theology. It's the same type of a thing with Avi Loeb. It's a good question. I mean, Avi Loeb grew up in Israel, so you can assume what his background is. Luna, the congresswoman, she's also Jewish, so you can assume what her perspective is. As I said, ancient astronaut theory was developed by a Jewish Torah scholar, so you can assume what his perception of ancient aliens is. And it's a great question because if you were to just quickly here, if you were to compare the eschatology, for example, and I'll get to your Halloween question and summarize and wind this down. But if you were to look at, say, the eschatology of Christians and Muslims, it's almost identical. For Christians, the Messiah returns and saves them. There's a rapture, people are saved, etc. In Islam, same thing happens. Muhammad doesn't come. Jesus comes in Islam. Jesus comes and he has I don't know if you call it an agreement in Islam, but he has a kind of a deal worked out, or he has a relationship that he shares with a character called Mahdi. And the Mahdi and Jesus act as the saviors. And then there's an antichrist in Islam called Al-Dajjal, and there's an antichrist in Christianity. We call them the antichrist. Now, you said you're not sure what it is. I'm not either. I think it's kind of like an energy or a spirit. But the point is, in Judaism, it's a little bit different, because they rejected Jesus. So that means that the Messiah of the Christians returning for the Jews is not the actual Messiah. And the Jewish Messiah would actually be more akin to the actual Antichrist.
Okay.
Who will sit on that third temple throne after they sacrifice the red heifer.
Okay. I was good. That's what I was going to bring in here. Now, there was something that was going around maybe about a couple of weeks ago, and I've looked around to see if it was true, because I've kind of got a small dossier built up on the whole red heifer thing. Been paying attention to it a lot more closely since a couple of years ago when I saw the purchase from Texas of the cows going out there to Israel. And of course, there are all the geopolitical considerations with that whole thing. It's very antagonistic, but then there is also the esoteric and the spiritual, the very Armageddon-like implications there, where you're trying to bring on the Messiah, or you're trying to force God's hand in some way. But as you just said right there, when you think about the theological realities of those three religions, one of them is still waiting for the Messiah to come. And if from a Christian standpoint, if the Messiah already came and he was killed, we're waiting for him to come back in the final judgment, the general resurrection. But who could the people who that are performing these rituals in Israel be really inviting back into the playing field if the Messiah has already been here and done his work 2,000 years ago? It's an interesting concept. That's why a lot of people say, "Oh, this is probably a play to bring about the Antichrist, whether willing or unwilling, or witting or unwitting, I should say." That's an interesting convergence of all these topics you just brought us to.
And I believe, in my assessment, that if we're talking about Christ or the Messiah, these are words that actually have two different meanings, etymologically speaking. But we're also talking about the cube, because traditionally, historically, esoterically, the human body is represented as either being a cube, representing the three dimensions of this world, or it's connected or chained. You can see this in the tarot cards. It's chained to a cube. And so that means that a new cube, a new Jerusalem, is a new body. It's like we say, a body of work. a body, a car body. It's like a structure for something. So we have a structure for perhaps a new way of thinking, which, as far as I'm concerned, is what we call Christ. It's Christ consciousness. It's being anointed with the wisdom that you are not a physical body, that you are a soul, a spirit inhabiting a physical body. And when you recognize this, you are born again in a spiritual sense. So I see all of these things as metaphors, and I see them connected back to your question about Halloween, because traditionally, this time of the year, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, is a time in which the lines between the physical and the spiritual become blurred. And when that happens, spirits are said to pass from this physical world, people who have died, more easily into the spiritual realm, but spirits can also pass into the physical realm. So depending on what part of the world you're in, they do this in Asia too, but it's largely from Western Europe, you would wear costumes, that's our Halloween costumes, to either scare the evil spirits or the wicked spirits or the malicious spirits or malevolent spirits, or you would dress very nicely, dress in a nice suit, a nice dress, and you would welcome your ancestors, which is also, both of those reasons are why you leave food, so that you can appease those spirits. It's the treat or the trick that is the vandalism of the home or the harming of the family. Or you have spirits come in that are kind, that are friends or family, and they have a nice meal with you, which is why you leave the food out. And so as the line between these two worlds is blurred, there is a veil that is lifted. And I think that this is the most critical thing. And people call this, in religious terminology, they call this the apocalypse, and see it as some kind of external physical war or battle. But you have to understand that what's happening during this time of the year is, as that veil is lifted, or we call that the veil of Isis, the veil of Diana, the veil of the goddess, like the veil that women wear when they get married. Well, they're supposed to, if they're actually virgins, you're supposed to lift the veil. What that represents is nature. And once you unveil nature and you learn how nature works, that's part of the revelatory process of learning the math and the geometry and the science, which is what mythology originally was. It's what's part of the process of being initiated into the mystery religions and traditions of antiquity, is to be initiated into the secrets of nature, to lift the veil. Isis says, you can read this on the static Isis depiction, very famously in Manly P. Hall's work, but elsewhere as well, that says, "No mortal man hath ever me unveiled," which means that no mortal can lift my veil. But once you recognize that you are a soul and a spirit, you are immortal. You do not die. You transcend the body and time and space. And that means that a non-mortal, a resurrected and born again individual, which is not a exclusively Christian concept by any means, that is then what allows for those people, once they are born again, to access what is beyond the veil. So the point is, and to answer your question, this is what in Greek we call the apocalypse. The apocalypse in Greek means to lift the veil. And there is a battle between good and evil. But in the archaic antiquity terminology, that good and evil is light and dark. That good and evil is the warmth of the sun and the cold of the fall and the winter. In Wiccanism, they refer to it as the oak and the holly king, and they fight with each other. This is the concept of Jesus and the Antichrist, perhaps. It's the God and the devil. But that's what this time of the year is. And you can relate that with this object and the coming of the Messiah to a yearly cycle. And you can connect the four horses of the apocalypse. The white horse, which Muhammad rides, Jesus is said to have ridden, and so many other deities, is the horse of the spring that comes to conquer. The red horse is the youth that has a sword to proceed with the conquering. What is being conquered, if not darkness and coldness, with light and with warmth? In the fall, you have the judgment. This judgment is the judgment of all mankind as the veil lifts. That black horse is, of course, the horse of the, no pun intended to kind of reference the Wizard of Oz, but that horse, of course, is the horse that brings the scales. Whether it's Jesus holding the scales, or it's various prophets and saints, or it's Santa Muerta in Mexico holding the scales, the skeleton saint. Those scales weigh like in the Hall of Judgment in Egypt, your actions and the things that you've done throughout the year. And then the pale horse comes, and the pale horse is chloros, which is where the word chlorophyll comes from. And we know as a sign that the end times are coming when the chlorophyll is not as present, when the sunlight is not as present, and leaves start to change colors. That's a sign of the end times. And the pale horse comes with death, which is the cold and the dark of the winter when crops do not grow and things are taken underground to the underworld like Persephone in the mythology. And so the critical key detail point is, if this Atlas object represents the messianic presence, then it's not, as far as I'm concerned, a singular instance in which everything changes forever. It's just a natural process that occurs every single year and is part of a much larger and much smaller cycles, that when we recognize and understand these things, we don't have to be afraid of some apocalyptic end time event occurring. We don't have to be afraid of there being some sort of Armageddon war. However, people that interpret this stuff as literal, as the Israelis clearly do, and as the Christian zealots, at least the ones that run the United States, clearly do, they want these prophecies to be literal. And so they are, as you alluded to, nudging God in that direction to create the situation where they can sacrifice the red heifer, they can destroy the Muslim site, they can build the holy third temple, they can install the Antichrist, or to them, the Messiah, and they can use that to take control of world governments, whether that's through just the ritual or the war, or it's through this idea of that a Messiah or something is coming from somewhere else, and giving them power because they are chosen. So all of that, I think, is really critical to understanding the context of all these words and ideas that are thrown around, relating both to Atlas but also to geopolitical events. I know that's a mouthful, but this is my assessment.
You know, it brings us exactly to 8:00. It's perfect. And I was just gonna say, you're not gonna get that at the New York Post. none of that's gonna give you at the New York Post. And oh man, see, this is where I was hoping and where I was fairly confident we were going to go with it all tonight, because it was never just going to be about, hey, you know, well, let's see in November if something lands somewhere and there is a Mars attacks kind of confrontation that happens, which is just so ridiculous on the face of it. Like, you know, I made jokes about, you know, when they said it might be an invasion party. This might actually be the, you know, some sort of an aggressive meeting of two civilizations this November. I laughed and I said, thank God it's finally come, because if it was ever going to be that way, you're talking again, and this is a point that has been made in a variety of ways by all over the place. It is when you're talking about civilizations that are coming from perhaps the other side of a galaxy, or even if they're traveling interdimensionally or something, you're talking about scientific concepts to make that kind of travel even possible. That dwarfs us by millions of years. I have no clue, but they're not going to be coming in a motorboat from some God knows what distance that we can actually see them and watch them and track them over the course of a few months. If they finally got here in their galactic motorboat, I mean, even the speed of a comet would not be what an advanced civilization like this that's seeking to conquer a small planet on the other side of the galaxy would do. They would just
observe.
Oh yes. So I always knew it was something else, but again, it's what is below the surface and what may become geopolitically expedient for people who are trying to make a meal of this planet who are already here. And that's why I like talking to you about this stuff.
Yes, and one other thing, Frank, I wanted to mention to you is that I just kind of stumbled on the dates, didn't even really think much of it. But remember when the New York Times article came out back in 2017 about the ATIP program?
Wait. Repeat that again. You're talking about the Tic Tac stuff?
Yeah. So the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP, that it was a New York Times report back in 2017 that came out and kind of blew the whole story wide open.
Yes.
And then Louis Elizondo and others came.
Yes.
You remember that? So I thought it was peculiar because I'm highly skeptical of all these whistleblowers that never show up to the skiffs, and they have the skiff flu, as that Luna girl even alluded to as well. That was just 2 months after Oumuamua was discovered. So I thought it was peculiar. We discover, quote, Oumuamua in October 2017. And then just a few weeks later, this report is published by the New York Times about ATIP, which opens the conversation for the discussion of things that eventually merge together in regard to the UAP UFO subject and then these interstellar objects. And considering that you've had so many of these whistleblowers, and so, like David Grush, for example, or you've had so many of these UFO authorities, for example, Jeremy Corbell, and people, even George Knapp, who I used to like, honestly, and people like Stephen Greer and so many of these other UFO people, Louis Elizondo, who have been caught over and over and over again selling fake UFO stories. Corbell has sold, my goodness, he's sold a UFO in his backyard in Palm Springs from a military base, which was openly, like, identifiably flares. He sold that as a UFO. That was fake. And Louis Elizondo sold just recently an irrigation circle somewhere in the Four Corners region of the U.S., and he admitted that it wasn't real after the fact. He sold that as a giant flying saucer, and it was just an irrigation circle that they put a filter over the picture. And he even admitted, yeah, it was wrong, but it doesn't mean that aliens aren't real. But he submitted that to Congress, and it was admittedly knowingly fake. So I started to think, my point is, I started to think this is all really convenient, that Oumuamua is discovered, quote unquote, and then suddenly here's the ATIP program. Suddenly there's all these reports of UFOs, there's whistleblowers coming to Congress, but they don't tell Congress anything new behind the scenes. Congress has complained about that, members of Congress. And also, a lot of the evidence they present has been fake. And then a lot of it's third, I call it thrift store UFO shopping. It's like, yeah, I heard it from someone who heard it from someone who saw it from somebody.
Yeah.
And it's almost like instead of these people promoting disclosure, I'd argue the opposite. I'd argue that they're opting for more closure. That the whole UFO subject, whatever it is, people have gotten way too close to the truth. And so whatever that truth might be, it's probably a complex combination of things. Now they're working to take control of the narrative, like the military and the intelligence community in the early days did in the 1950s with their Robertson panel report, where they wanted to infiltrate UFO groups because they might know more than the military does. They wanted to condition the public to accept the UFO as either a mysterious object that could be identified later, therefore we can completely destroy the whole UFO community, because if we can identify this as a military craft, then you're discredited, or as something that's just kind of not happening at all. This was all in the Robertson panel report. They wanted to use Disney, they wanted to use universities, they wanted to use documentaries. Richard Doty was essentially a part of that program much later with Paul Benowitz, where they drove the man crazy with fake UFO stories. So my point is, I think that this whole UFO disclosure is really the opposite. I think it's UFO closure. I think they're closing the case, and the little bit that they're opening, they're giving you, it's like a rebranding of this UFO subject. And I think it probably does have something to do with what the White House science director has said and others are recently talking about with Trump and advanced technology. I think that we're getting exposure to, yes, we have much more advanced technology, $21 trillion of underground bases and God knows what else. And they're going to take the UFO subject and incorporate it into that and use it to probably take us to a new stage of civilization. I don't think that this is real. I think it's very orchestrated and staged, in my assessment.
I've heard you talk about this with Clyde on Ground Zero on a number of occasions, but I do not remember the conclusions drawn or the theories offered when bringing up origins. It's no doubt to me that if any proprietary technology is introduced to a civilization that can deconstruct it, learn about what makes it tick, reproduce it itself, and then beginning over the course of time, once you realize and understand the technology, how to innovate it, how to make it your own, how to take it to the next step, how to take it to the next several steps over the course of 100 years. So the idea that we have technology that is hidden from the public, that if it were shown to us, most of us would have no other explanation to explain it in use other than it's alien, it's not human, it's magic. I mean, whatever the hell it is, I have no doubt. But the real question is what seeded it. When it comes to that, when it comes to the initial breakthroughs that gave us the ability to do whatever the hell we're doing in the sky or deep underground, what's your leading theory on that? Where did we get the seed? Where did we get the initial gift? Or was it really just a genuine laboratory breakthrough? Because most people think, was it the Vril? Was it a some sort of a treaty with the Greys or something like that? Crash retrieval that we were able to go and squirrel away and start picking apart. What's your origin story of the technology that has most assuredly been co-opted by us in the last however many decades?
It's a great question. I don't know how much time we have left, so I'll try to keep it simple. But
just answer it however satisfyingly you can. Don't worry about the clock. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So my assessment of that is probably a little bit different than what others might say, because I've noticed living overseas that the technology over here, at least in Japan, and what I've heard about Singapore and China as well, seems to be on the surface exceptionally more advanced than anything that we have in the United States. And that's just what it's just like basic fundamental things that just make life a lot easier. That you're like, why don't we have this in we're the richest nation in the world and we don't have any of this stuff? I could give you examples. It's not really the point. But then I started thinking, why is that? And then I learned, whether it's true or not, I actually kind of assume that it is. We learned it from this woman who worked with the Bush administration about these $21 trillion of underground cities and bases. And I started thinking, oh, that's why we don't have high-speed trains. Oh, that's why nothing works in the United States and we're still using like 1950s apartments. It's because we've put all of our money and all of the people that are smart into these underground facilities for whatever the purpose of the reason. It could be some fallout stuff. The Vault Tech Corporation, they're going to start a war. They want to manage time and manage the end of the world. But we've done that. And other countries, I mean, China probably has secret programs too, but like the Chinese as a country, like their cities, most of them, the main cities, are like way more advanced than what America has. Tokyo is like it's like another planet compared to any American city that I've been to. And I've traveled all over the country. Come to Tokyo, it's like this is literally like an alien planet. This is weird. It just feels out of place. So I started thinking in that way, and I thought, maybe that's why, because we threw all of our technology underground, and it might have had something to do with the Cold War. It might have had something to do with post World War II years. There could be a lot of reasons why. Maybe it's a conspiracy, a breakaway civilization. I don't know. I think most technology advances naturally, and I think by natural, what I mean to imply by that is like I don't know how a cell phone works, and if everybody who knows how a cell phone works dies, we won't have cell phones for very long. It doesn't mean that we're not the people that don't know how they work. It doesn't mean that we're not smart and maybe don't know how to fix a car, or we don't know how to fix an air conditioner. We just don't know how phones work. So we might lose that technology. There's a lot of technology being developed by people that are just average everyday folks that you probably walk past on the street, and they're not being influenced by aliens or something like this. Now, that's not to say that historically there haven't been people that have reached out to the other side. Yes, there's the stories of the Vril. There's, of course, John Dee and Edward Kelly. But I think the most credible case is what you find all throughout the Amazon. You find people that seemingly have very advanced knowledge of medicine and plants and spirituality. And, we can say a lot about the Amazon and the stories about what was there before the later conquistadors came. However, what we know for sure is that ayahuasca plays a pretty big role in that. And we would say the same thing about poppy and blue water lily and peyote and soma in India. Various substances that give people access to the other side, and then they come back with knowledge of medicine, knowledge of whatever. I mean, of course, some people see on DMT, which is part of the ayahuasca brew, they see things that are technological. They see geometry, which is what, if you look at a Windows computer used to use the logo or the Windows logo. That is literally painted on caves in like southern France. This is like what shamans used to see in their visions, in the same way that the Apple logo is the Edenic apple, that thing that was offered to mankind and mankind took a bite of it. So there's a strange connection between, we like to think maybe it's like a channeling session, but really I think it's substances that alter our perceptions of reality and place us into maybe the locus or the talus that we talked about earlier. And we get information that way. If you think about the little green men of the UFO, this idea, I mean, what are the plant spirits that the shamans and others talk to? They're little green plant men. It's the same kind of an idea with the fairies, which Jacques Vallée has pointed out a long time ago in Passport to Magonia. There's a parallel between all of these things. And I think technology is part of that, because if you look at, for example, look at the stories of the elves, these mythical creatures. I was reading a random book on magic history, Frank, and I come across this section on elves, and it's just like completely out of place. The section on elves explains that elves actually come from the stars, and they're really, really technologically advanced. Some of them and some of the fairies are said to ride mechanical horses that are so fast you can't see them moving, like a UFO. So there's a connection to these folklores, these myths, these legends, these mythical creatures, the green plant spirits, UFOs, UAPs, and aliens, and advanced technology that I think is a little bit more complex than just some women with long hair sat down and said, "I'd like some technology, please." Not that that's not part of it, but I think overall, all of these things are valid assessments. I think in one respect, most technology is naturally developed. And in another respect, some of it probably comes from the other side. We also know that a lot of the people at Davos, they like to microdose and they like to experiment with various drugs. That was in, what was that, Forbes magazine, I think, or one of the big publications. We know, I mean, look at Elon Musk. You're telling me this guy isn't on a concoction of various drugs, or Jeff Bezos, admittedly? I mean, Elon Musk was, I think, admittedly on a bunch of drugs during the presidential campaign. That's why he was all acting weird and tweaking and stuff. Like, this is traditionally and historically what you find in elite circles anyway. You find people that, whether it's because they want more power or they want to obtain power, you do anything to get that. Doesn't matter if it's doing something really bad to an animal or a human, or taking a combination of drugs, or maybe you're more spiritual and you choose to meditate, or you choose to use a substance like an ayahuasca. The point is, technology probably comes from a lot of different places. First and foremost, it's human. But if you go beyond that, it's probably coming from that same place where those discs were supposed to be coming from in that 1947 document. It's coming from the other side, which is why I think we're looking in the wrong place for aliens. If you want to find aliens, you look into computer technology and artificial intelligence. That's probably where the aliens are coming from.
Yeah. Oh man. And that's the beginning of our part 2. You got to come back. We got to crack into that, because okay, I got a couple things to say now. Well, the first thing is just picking up what you just said right there. In that New York Post article with Avi Loeb and Luna, they had, hold on, what's the end part of it? When asked if 3i Atlas could be the product of non-human intelligence, Loeb pointed out that human beings are creating their own non-human intelligence, which will eventually have capabilities beyond our own, namely artificial intelligence. Now, Ryan, right there alone, that is a reference to a very popular theory that I know Clyde has brought up in the past, that what if beings or entities like alien grays aren't actually even biologicals? What if they are artificial intelligence, because of all of the descriptions of them being very rubbery and unfeeling, very robot-like, and all that stuff? That perhaps they were they were capable of long travel or warp speed travel without damaging whatever biological entities would have had to whatever they would have to endure going through that kind of travel, that kind of stress on the system there. And that conversation usually leads to whether or not aliens or any kind of non-human visitation is actually a vestige of a human civilization from the future. I think that's what it was. Sending it back, like that it's actually us, but it's what's left of us from the future. And I always thought that was one of those hamster wheel trips where you're kind of looking, you're like in a mirror house at that point. You don't know which way is up, and it's very, very contact-like. So that's number one. When you talk about AI, you want to look inside of the computers. Maybe that's where the aliens are coming from. We definitely have to talk about that. And then when you bring up just Japan, it was last week, maybe on Tuesday or Wednesday of last week, we were watching this reporter in Japan who was standing on a deck of a train station somewhere, and he was going to witness this first passing of a bullet train.
I've seen that, yeah.
This thing passes by this Japanese reporter at 300 miles an hour. It's like 2 times faster than a NASCAR vehicle, whatever the hell it was. It goes by him so quick. He had nothing to do but just like laugh, nervous and excited laughter. And I shit you not, that very same week, Ryan, over here in the U.S., the Amtrak group over here in the U.S., they made an announcement that there's a new Acela line that is going to be able to take a person from Boston to Washington, D.C. in 7 to 9 hours, which anybody who lives in the Northeast knows that you can drive from Boston to D.C. in probably less than that if the traffic is favorable. And I'm scratching my head just doing the math going, now there are very smart people in the United States. There are people who want to innovate. There are a lot now, but what the hell is that difference there? What the hell is it that we're being fed the gruel that is Amtrak going 7 to 9 hours between Boston and DC, and there, like you said, Tokyo being an alien planet, this thing passed by this guy in a blink of an eye. It was breathtaking to even watch on a phone. It's like, damn, man. Yeah. So they're smoking. They're definitely smoking something different out there, because over here, all we got is the zombie drugs that freeze people into place.
Well, I have 2 comments on that. I don't know if that's I'm assuming that's the Shinkansen. That train, if that is the Shinkansen, that has been around since the 60s. They had that.
What?
And I think they've had virtually no serious safety issues in 60 years of operating that train. My wife is about a year older than me, and she was riding that thing when she was a kid. But it's been around since the 60s. I want to say 62, 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there. Yeah, you could just look it up pretty easily. Shinkansen, SHINKANSEN, I believe, Shinkansen train. But the other point is, if you're on that train, it is silent if you're in the car.
Yeah.
So you see it go by, but when you're on the train, it's just like, it's quieter than a plane. It's really crazy. So anyway, there's that. And I was thinking, I've heard people argue, well, and this isn't a valid argument. The reason the U.S. doesn't have that is because the country's much bigger and because we all have cars. And I get that assessment. What I don't get is how California and states like Florida, and then this Amtrak thing you're mentioning, California has wasted, I think, up to $17 billion was the last time I checked.
Yeah.
Building a high-speed train, and they have yet to even complete like the base foundation of where the thing starts. And then Florida, I was told when I was a kid, you just wait. You're not going to have to drive on I-4, the interstate there, to go to Orlando or go to Tampa to go to a hockey game or something, Ryan. You're going to have this quick bullet train it's the Sunrail. And God, it's like a decade plus, and the thing still isn't like what they have over in Asia. And then up with Amtrak. I mean, my God, Amtrak is a whole nother show you could do. So it's not that, oh, we have cars, so we can't do those things. It's like when we try to do those things, we can't build even the foundation of it for 17 billion. I forget the number. I did a show on it though, Frank. I think I should actually look this up really quick. Let me see how much did the Shinkansen cost to build back in the 1960s or even today? It's like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the cost.
Well, first of all, just to confirm what you said, yeah, maybe that is the train that was in this video. And if it is, it's even more impressive because, yes, it was the first day in service was October 1st, 1964. So that, I mean, we're talking about the year that the Beatles landed in the United States is when they were already pushing the speed of sound. I mean, that's nuts. What did you want to know?
1.3 billion is what it cost them to build it. So they literally built what they did in California, which they didn't even complete anything. They spent 17 or roughly probably 15, 16 times as much money, and they didn't even build it. Like what is that, Frank? It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, and it makes so many things. And it's not why it hasn't happened that's puzzling, because if you just look at where the dollars and the cents went, you realize that, okay, well, I mean, California, they were talking about high-speed rail for God knows how long, and not only were they wasting all their money on all of their in-state shenanigans and, of course, subsidizing non-citizens and all that other stuff, but they even did it to the detriment of their dams and their waterways. I mean, they let some critical infrastructure, in-state critical infrastructure, crumble just because they needed to prop up these insane social initiatives, which, of course, good for Japan on that as well. I know that you had some really good, some meaningful immigration victories out there to keep people out from the outside, or to severely limit who comes in. Now all the Japanese have to do is start having children again, but we're drowning over here.
Yes, and it's I think the most interesting thing about the train problem is that it's not just about waste or like sabotage. It's the same thing with the trash problem, the drug problem, etc. It's that politicians, whether they're serious or not, will say, we just don't know how to do this. And I don't know if that's crazy or if it's crazier that the public are like, yeah, we just don't know how to do it. Meanwhile, yeah, we know how to do it. I mean, just ask. I mean, we have a lot of Chinese in the U.S. Ask one of them how to build it. They actually, the Chinese built our railroads in the first place, right? American history teaches the Chinese built the railroads. Get the Chinese back over here to build these things. I'm sure that the Japanese are helping the Indians build railroads. Why can't they help us build railroads? It's not just a matter of like incompetence. It's like organized, conscious sabotage of civilization is what it is. It's really sad that even communist countries like China that are like communist capitalists, it's sad that even they have these types of technologies, that they are functioning better than our country is. But then again, that's probably because we spent $21 trillion on building an underground ecosystem. So that might explain it.
It could be. And that's why, that's where all the real good drug takers are hanging out right now. And the rest of us are taking all the really good sedatives, nothing that's stimulating. But take a listen to so I guess I was wrong. This is the clip I was talking about. Japan's new maglev, M-A-G-L-E, the maglev train that can reach speeds as high as 505 kilometers an hour. And how much is that in miles per hour?
I don't know kilometers. I haven't translated that. But what was it, 505?
Yeah, so it's probably still over 3.
Let me see. I'll translate it. I don't know. I grew up in America, so they didn't teach us that.
Yeah, well, yeah.
314 miles per hour.
Okay, so remember, this is an old technology. Obviously, it's a new rail, but this is an old technology, and this is a common occurrence, common thing to see in Japan. And watch the reporter's reaction to this.
今見えた。一瞬見えてきた。
Gone.
Goodbye.
Now show it.
That-
Show it. Now show a Greyhound bus.
And then now let's watch somebody travel between Boston and DC and New York. You know, you can vlog for days. I mean, I wish we had more opportunities to have that look of excitement over here. You know, can you imagine all the? Come on, man.
And another thing, Frank, is I've always wondered if we did build that, another problem would be you wouldn't be able to keep it clean and you wouldn't be able to keep it safe. See, that's another problem over here at least. I mean, I haven't been to China, but I would assume that's the same way in China, different reasons. But you can fall asleep on the train and not get stabbed or burned or raped or tortured. You can leave your wallet on the train, and 99% of the time, someone takes it to the police station. So that's another problem that I brought up on my show a lot. It's not just about building the train. It's about having the culture in which the kinds of things that happen on the crappy trains in the US or like New York subways won't happen on the nice trains if we actually got them. It's a cultural issue, and it has nothing to do with Republicans and Democrats. I don't think it has anything to do with having the National Guard on the street. It's a cultural problem, and it doesn't matter who the president is or who your mayor is. It's a cultural issue. And I think the scary part, like objectively, the scary part is it's really easy to build or to destroy something. It's not easy to build something. So when you lose that in a culture, you're talking 1 generation, 2 generations to destroy it. You're talking 2, 3, 4, 5 or more generations to build it to where it was before. Got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, we can go on for hours and hours because this conversation has just written itself, and it's smooth, and it was really wonderful. And I can't wait to now we know what we're doing for the second time. I want to jump into your work that you have done on AI alien origins, because I think that there's probably something I can throw in there too from a few recent shows, and recurring themes on this show as well, that might be able to go hand in hand with that. Just by the sounds of it, I think we might be able to really rock out on that one as well. In the meantime, let everybody know what is coming up on your show. You are very active on air, both as a guest and as a host. And I know that you're working on a book right now. You sent me an advanced copy of the manuscript, so I'm still making my way into that one. Let everybody know what's coming up.
Sure thing. Monday through Friday, my show is independent. You can find it at tstradio.info or thesecretteachings.info. I do guest spots on shows like this. A lot of people have actually found me and listened to my show because I've been on your show. So I want to thank you for that. You have a really great audience. If you'd like to email me, contact me for something we talked about tonight, if you have a question, etc., you can email me at rdgable@yahoo.com. So that's RDGABLE. It's on the website as well, along with my social media links. Don't have a lot of those because I've been kicked off of virtually everything over the last 15 years. So there's very limited social media presence, but it's all there on the website or through the email. And as I said, and as you alluded to, my show it's very active Monday through Friday, consistently every single night of the week. We also do video shows on Friday evenings as well. But again, it's all on the website or social media. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Frank, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan. Have a great night.
You too. This was fun.
Always was, and always will be. Take care. All right, everybody. So listen, here we go. We are going to take a really quick break. It's 8:30. And we have a couple of minutes left of the show before we go into extra innings. And that's when I'm just going to, tonight for extra innings, I have some more. You know what's fun? I got to look through this thumb drive. It was sent to me by Dave's cast of characters, who did so much of the peripheral entertainment at the Jamboree last weekend with the photo booth and the caricaturist and the magician, and they gave me the thumb drive of all the photos that was taken at the booth. So I get to, I'll be reaching out to people, say, hey, I got some photos of you. Here's the digital copies. And I got to see what the hell's in this one. I know that there's definitely a picture of a little Indian man in this. I got to go check that one out. So that'll be nice. I won't be able to do this in extra innings. I just want to make sure what I got at home first. But in extra innings, I'm just going to be reading the chat, and we'll hang out. And I got a couple of things that we can watch together. In the meantime, please, I put out a link for our survey. You know, it's possible for you to get the survey done in about 3 minutes. We made sure that it was just about that length, and everything that we learn in this survey is going to be huge in our focusing on what's coming up for us in the new year in 2026. I put the links in the chat room again. The link to the survey is in the description of this episode and will be for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to be putting it on Twitter tomorrow, Patreon, Subscribestar. It's in the Telegram right now. People in Discord had a first crack at it today as well. It's going to answer at least 2 or 3 key questions for me. So don't worry about getting answers that are most, that were accurately depict your exact feelings on one issue or another. Just click away to the thing that gets closest to your thoughts, and don't worry about it, because trust me, the insights are going to be very important. And I'm going to let you know about all of our 2026 funding goals, which are going to be really fun, because just like in 2017, when we said, all right, guys, when we hit this on Patreon, the show is going from 1 hour to 2 hours. When we hit this on Patreon, we're going to establish Saturday night specials. We have a whole slew of things that are about to be laid out in front of you to unlock, to get ourselves to finally a 2026 funding goal that we set up on Subscribestar. We wanted to start there because it has a progress bar that we can all see and track and get behind, and also see things get checked off. It's very psychologically satisfying. We'll talk about that in the shows to come. But in the meantime, take the survey. We'll talk soon, right on the other side of this short break.
Oh, back to school, back to school, back to school. Well, here goes nothing.
Well, I don't know what the hell happened there. Anyway, sorry, I had a... Okay. Thanks, system. Lagging all over the place. Well, something skipped for me. You might have heard it. But everything's okay. We're still here. We're all still here. All right, it's 8:34. We're going to go to your super chats. We're going to take your calls. The number is 914-200-0269. 914-200-0269. Thanks again to Ryan Gable. That was great. We covered a lot of stuff. And tomorrow we're going to get into a lot of stuff there too. I mean, you want to talk about cultural decline? I'll tell you, the death penalty is coming up in my mind again. I'm sure everybody's been watching over and over and over, especially if you had to go onto Twitter for something, you wanted to check something out, and before you can do anything you wanted to do, you're served up 5 more viewings of that young girl getting her head nearly cut off on the train in Charlotte by the subhuman. And I don't know, man. That is a huge mark of cultural decline. The people who should still be alive because the people who killed them, who had rap sheets as long as the Nile River, were allowed to be breathing free air. Allowed to be breathing in many cases, let alone ride on public transit. And it's just terrible stuff. You know, it's all around. So that came up in my mind when I was thinking about what's going on in Japan and how they are, at least they have some sanity when it comes to immigration. Let's see here. Let's see here. Jay Britt says, awesome discussion with Ryan. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Jay. Stowstube, man. Now we got everybody's face. This is the best thing about it. It's like everything's different for so many people now. A lot of regulars. I have a face in my head now. Stowstube says, evening, Frank and Franklies, Franciscans, and the one and only Jay Brits. See? Thank you for your kind words last night, my good man. Enjoy the week. Patrick, the anti-Catholic. Oh, I'm sure this is going to be a very unbiased comment. Patrick, I've never seen this person before. Patrick, the anti-Catholic, is here. Says, if you think a shady voice telling you to sacrifice your child is worth worshiping, every Abrahamic religion does, you are the problem. Well, that is a reductio ad absurdum, no doubt about it. That is not going to agree to the premise of that statement at all. And then he says, Jesus preaches hate in Luke 14:26. Oh, Patrick the anti-Catholic is reading the Bible. Yes. Okay, well, let's go and I will go see that. I will go and see that. Luke 14:26. Boom. Let's see. If anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. All right, so here is the anti-Catholic. Thank you for the tip, by the way. But if you want to talk about translation and the art of translation, we're not talking when the use of the word hate in one printing or another is not the advocating of a genuine venomous animosity for people. It's talking about the commitment of a disciple to God above all things, which in turn dictates how you care for and look after and fight for the soul and the sanctity of the souls of the people you love, including your wife, your children. So listen, I thank you for being a part of the show tonight, Patrick, the anti-Catholic, and thank you for the tip. But you're coming from a place of bad faith, and it sounds like you got just a lot of, if that's the way you present yourself to the world, then it sounds like you got a lot of trauma you're working through. But I'll take the topic, and I'm no theologian. In my current state, even I can see where that's coming from. That verse. But anyway, Kuhn says a new era for the show has begun. This is our friend from the Netherlands. Thank you all for being so welcoming and friendly. This week has pushed me out of my comfort zone, and I'm glad I did it. A big thank you to you and the whole team for this huge achievement. It's truly admirable. I appreciate you, Kuhn. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Man, that's just wonderful. That's nice. That's nice. I'll tell you, Kuhn has been, that was a really interesting, because I think about being in Kuhn's position. Like if I chose to go to the Netherlands, that's a big leap of faith. You know, it's a long, it could have been a bad time for him. It really could have been. It's one thing for me to go to Norwalk, Connecticut, and roll the dice on having a good time at some bowling alley or whatever, and it turned out being a kind of shitty night. All right, well, it's a 20-minute drive back from Norwalk. He crossed an ocean. He flew over the wreckage of the Titanic to get over here. Anyway, we're going to take you some more of your calls. 914-200-0269. Let me hear from you. Ryan Gable, thank you again. Haywood over on Rumble says, it's really just a big green dildo heading toward New York. My best bet is to bend over and take it like a man. You live in New York? Were you trying to say your best bet, Frank? Because Haywood, you said my best bet, meaning it's a dildo heading to New York, and Haywood is going to come to New York to receive it for me. Like it sounded like he was about to take a bullet for me, which is thank you, Haywood. It's probably the nicest thing you've said, that you're going to take that load for me. Jay Semo says, hey, great show. Didn't miss a beat after a big weekend. Yeah, well, tell that to my vocal cords. I'm still very, very tired. You know? So I go home and I try not to say that much. And tomorrow I'll be a little bit more. This is why all those singers, then again, they're trained, but they still have a strict vocal rest in between when they go on those monster tours and shit like that. But I should be all right, especially by next week. Tomorrow's Wednesday. Then we got Thursday. Then we're off Friday. And then we'll be back on Monday. And next week, we got so many great guests. And I'm booking a whole bunch of other guests. You know who's got some great stuff coming up? Michael Collins from Wandering Wolf. He's putting together Ancient Civilizations event. That is going to be from December 5th to December 7th in Scottsdale, Arizona. I think all of our Arizona friends should go out there and hang out with them. Listen to who he's got coming up. He's got David Childress. He's got Jimmy Corsetti. Gary from Nerdrotic, of course, himself. Michael Button, who I think was just on Joe Rogan. Will Brown from Incredible History. He's been on this show before. I got to bring him back again. But, and also AJ from the Y-Files. So that sounds like it's going to be a really fun event. It's called Quest for Ancient Civilizations, December 5th through 7th. And of course, I told him, hey, he got in touch with me. He told me about it. I said, well, come on the air. Let's talk about it. And then he said, I would love for you to interview a few people on this program that we have built up over here. I said, really? Because there's quite a few people I would love to have on this show. So we'll see out of all those people if I can get 3 of them booked over the course of the next 4 to 6 weeks, which would be fantastic. That'd be great. So look out for that. The booking is really taking it up a notch. All right, let's see here. Over on Pilled, we have NX17 says, interesting conversation with Ryan. Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you. All right, I have a couple of... here's another one from Jared Casada. Jared says, Frank, I was the one who asked KJ about the glory hole. I'm a little surprised that I was the only one. Jared, for that, please email me. Email me and you're getting a prize. You're the only one with the balls. Okay? You're the only one with the balls. I don't know what we're going to send you. We're going to send you something. And then maybe that'll teach other people next time we have a jamboree that I host here in New York. Because there's got to be something at the home base. There's got to be something that always comes back to the home base, no matter what we may do in other places. That'll teach other people to go easy on KJ. I want everybody asking you about the glory hole special next time. Jay on Pilled says, cheers, Frankster. Well, thank you. I haven't been called Frankster in years. My friend Christina used to call me that. And, but thank you for that. Thank you. All right. What else do we got? What else do we have over here? Yeah, on that one story, I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about it tomorrow a little bit more, because I got an email last time we spoke about the death penalty. Because on that last note that we left off with Ryan Gable, all I'm thinking about now is civilizational decline, and how much time it takes to build up a civilization, how quickly it takes it to strip it all away. Especially when the people who are running that civilization at that given time really have no connection to the kind of work ethic and vision and the principles and the tenets, philosophical, civic tenets that actually made a society strong and thriving and robust. All that's gone. All of that is gone, and now it's a managed decline. Because especially when it comes to the big cities that are all run by progressive types, the last thing that they can ever do is commit to bold tactics to keep people in line, to tolerate absolutely no public violence, degeneracy, all that other stuff, but to also pull back away from the industrial base of people who are law-abiding and, good members of society, to allow them to go out there and start businesses and work and put their lives into something, to be able to earn for themselves, and to have every incentive to do so, because they are not completely depressed by all the red tape it takes to open up a business, and then all of the taxes and all the fees and all of the palm greasing that needs to go on to just even make a decent living. Forget about saving something for the next generation. So we are all completely backwards. We're all backwards. And then when you take all of these types of, social philosophies that are backwards and are avoidant, they avoid harsh truths. They don't want to be able to, and everything is based on victim and oppressor and race and sex and all that. Then you get to a point where you're so paralyzed, you can't even allow yourself to identify problems, let alone be able to come up with some meaningful solutions. And then all of your economic ideas, you need to leech off of people who are productive, because you need somewhere to steal the money from to be able to give to others, to be able to win elections and to pursue whatever it is you think is going to be a much more equitable future by just throwing money at a problem. And that is why we are really just bottoming out, and it's a managed decline. That's why I've said so many times in the past, when a big election comes around, I say, well, you know what? If you're going to, many times over the years since I started voting, I found myself just voting for a candidate that might just make the impact into the waters below a little bit less. How can we create some drag? Can we create some wind resistance on the way down? I mean, I'd love for us to be able to snag a branch and give us some time to think about how we can crawl down the cliff. But this is what it is. And when you look at the footage of people being slaughtered, the types of things that I used to see on television clips that only came out of South America, like, wow, they really get it raw in other parts of the country. Other parts of the world, I should say. Used to say that a lot back in the 90s and the early 2000s. Other parts of the world, they get it really raw from their media. They're shown disturbing things every day. And it kind of makes you think like, oh, well, maybe it's not happening here. No, it was. We're just sheltered. And now we know just how bad it is, because the same people who were sheltering us from certain realities about crime and all that stuff, and even in the 1990s, things have gotten so bad right now because of the way that we have positioned ourselves, and then we have acquiesced to the dregs of society instead of trying to prop up and make it easier for good stand-up citizens and neighbors to go out there and do their thing and to build up the country and to build up opportunities in the country and to do it safely. That has it's gotten so much worse that now all we see, especially with the internet, is all the shit that maybe in the past the media would have had a better time covering up. But I don't think they'd be able to cover it up right now. It's so bad. It's so bad. And then you put the immigration stuff on top of it. Now, the guy that slaughtered the young girl on the train in Charlotte, he wasn't an illegal immigrant. You know, the native crime rate is bad enough, which is why keep everybody who doesn't belong here out and let them come in the right way. Doesn't matter where they come from. Let them come the right way. But now today they released the stabbing from the video from the stabbing in Charlotte from August, and God, awful. I think I've been, and it's the reason why they put it out there. You think about it all day. The horrible video they released today, right the moment after she was stabbed, completely disoriented. She just kind of like covered her mouth with her hands. And then with about the 30 seconds left she had of life, was allowed to just think about what was happening to her, essentially. And that animal doesn't deserve 3 meals a day. He deserves to be fed to a meat grinder. Deserves to be fed to a meat grinder, alive, feet first, and then fed to pigs. That's all that person deserves. That's all that person deserves. And I've got a couple of emails that was written to me not too long ago when we had that death penalty conversation. What was it, 2-3 weeks ago? I had an email I got to read to you, maybe tomorrow, because we only have a few minutes left of this one, like 9 minutes left. 845, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Well, your friend Pat got me thinking. I was born and raised Catholic. I still consider myself a Christian, but talking about what you just not to go into anything else, which I'd love to, but this is like I like where you're focusing in on. So we were created in the image and likeness of God, and it's not just the good people that were created in the image and the likeness of God. It's the other people that we look at as these aberrations, as these as these one-offs. When you look at the world from the other part and you see like maybe we're dealing with like 10% of the world like being rational, good human beings, and 90% of the world, there's also this concept of how many steps are you away from being the animal that you hate? Like what would it take? How many bad decisions, how many bad fucking things that come at you would take you from who you are now to somebody you couldn't recognize? Frankie, you're the best. Play with it. I love you. God bless.
Thank you. Someone I wouldn't recognize? Well, I don't know. A really bad drug addiction? A demonic possession? Some torture? Something that breaks your mind, perhaps? But when you talk about maybe perhaps all that stuff and more, or something I haven't even thought about, contributes to the end result of being the subhuman on the train who killed the girl. But when I think about this, you say, well, what's pushing my buttons right now? I don't know. I'm not losing my humanity. I think in my love for humanity, and that's not rationalization, I see in that respect the eliminating of a person like that as an act of self-defense for humanity. That's just what I feel it is. I just feel like that's it. If we have rationalized just war, if we have just war theory out there, if we talk about self-defense all the time and how it is not only a legal thing in whatever society we've set up, but maybe a moral thing because you have to defend yourself, that's just it. I mean, if you have the ability to defend yourself and to preserve your life and the life of others, then I think we're talking about morals and ethics right there. I don't know. I kind of see now the real question is, it starts becoming a little bit more muddy for people when you leave the scene of a crime, when you see somebody that it has decided, I'm going to take the life of people around me because I'm an animal with low impulse control and no IQ. And if you're there at the scene of the crime, you can empty an entire magazine into that person and you will probably get off scot-free. Okay? Unless, of course, they turn their back to you in the state of New York or something like that. I don't know. But, when you're there at the scene of the crime and something like that is going on, if the perpetrator of this evil, of this murder is taken down right then and there, it's whatever. And then but once you get to the point where the murderer has been subdued and arrested, and they have now been subdued, and you have the separation of time from the murder, and they are now in police or civil custody or whatever the hell it is. They have been settled down for the night. Then it becomes, well, whose right is it for us? What's the right? Where's the, where do we have it that this person can be, we can play God and take them down? And I'm just like, well, they played God and they are a danger to people. So who around here is going to feed this person? Say, well, the prisons feed them. Say, oh, well, it's crazy how all it takes is about an hour separating you from the murder and them surrendering themselves in some way, even with a struggle or whatever, that it comes down to we had a right and a duty to put down the animal if we had the ability to do so, because they are obviously a danger to everybody. And then an hour later, after they're in handcuffs by some other some other way, they have been subdued and whatever. Now it's just a big question of, does the state have the right to put this person down, even though if they ever saw the light of day again, somebody out there is going to be dead? And that's the case, by the way. I mean, the person who killed the girl in Charlotte, I think, 14 times the arrested violent criminal? 14 times. And that is perhaps what we're going to talk about tomorrow. What the hell is going through the minds of a liberal in this case? What's going through the minds of a liberal in this case? Now, we can talk about the basis for their worldview, and we can find all of the pieces of the puzzle there. But still, it's still fascinating to me to observe a person who will just put themselves and people around them in absolute easy to predict danger. And in doing so, they will pat themselves on the back, or are they getting money? Like, that's what I don't get. Are they getting money? Are judges getting money for all of the people that they don't put away for life? For all the people that they don't give the electric chair? I just want to know what you guys think. Perhaps that's what we'll do a little bit about tomorrow, and then Thursday we can bring on somebody. I don't know. I hope we get a lot of great calls tomorrow night. We're getting a lot of great calls in right now, but I got to end the show and open up extra innings. In fact, call into extra innings. Maybe I'll take some more calls and I'll just read the general chat on Pilled. So thank you guys and gals for everything. Haywood says, I have nothing against the death penalty as long as the killer dies the exact same way as the victim. No. I think that there is many cases in which the killer needs to die a little bit slower and a little bit more painfully, and to really contemplate. He gave that poor girl 30 bewildered seconds to consider that her life was slipping away. And I'll tell you, all my decision making is changing every day, especially when it comes to where I allow my wife and daughter to go without me, or at all. At all, even with me. Places we'll never go. Again, I don't know. Public transit, definitely not. Unless we're going to go to Japan. I will ride the train all day in Japan. In fact, I will pay to sleep on the train. And I'll eat my dinner off of the floor because I'm sure it is absolutely adequate dining surface. So thank you guys and gals for everything. We will be back tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. You've been a wonderful audience, and thank you again to Ryan Gable. Please go take the survey, become a sponsor of the show. I'll be letting you know where we are going in 2026 very, very soon. And yes, also just please remember, if you go to KetoBrainz.com and or MindThyMitochondria.com, both of those links are in the description. Anything you get from Molly's sites, from the KetoBrainz, which is a wonderful non-dairy, non-sugar nootropic creamer that I've been using now for a couple of years. I've been blessed to have them as a sponsor for the last year. And it is just an incredible day to start your day, to perk yourself up in the middle of the day. But Molly is also into the miraculous world of peptides. And if you use QFJAM as the promo code of any purchase you make on those two websites, you're going to be in the running for hundreds of dollars of fantastic prizes that we will announce on Thursday night. So go and do that. I'll catch you on the flip side. That means pilled.net, which is embedded on quitefrankly.tv as soon as the end credits roll. So I'll see you over there. It was almost perfect.
I'll catch you on the flip side.
Quite Frankly's Film for a live studio audience, and now the super chatters. Thank you so much to Jay Britz, to Stowstube, to even Patrick the anti-Catholic. Thank you to Koon, my friend from the Netherlands, and to Hey Would You Blow Me, and Jay Semo over there on Rumble. To all of our friends on Pilled, well, I'll be seeing you in a few minutes. Thank you so much. The link to After Hours is in the chat room right now. I'll see you there.
Goodbye.
All right, that's it. Thanks, everybody.
Will you shut up? No.
Do 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 do. You shouldn't still be live. Why are you still live, boy?